Getting back to a bit of normality in England, people take their first chance in months to go to the shops and to the pub. Celebrations as drinkers enjoy a pint outside. Some pubs didn't waste a moment and opened at midnight.
It's the first pint since Christmas in a pub. It's still outdoors, but at least it's not raining.
It's great, it's draft beer. The first draft beer for 6 months.
Queuing since dawn, people in England and Wales grabbed the chance to go back to the shops. Much anticipated haircuts as hairdressers report being booked for weeks ahead.
Very special, very special. I've been dying to come to the hairdressers.
We'll take a look at the different easing of lockdown today across the UK. Also tonight, David Cameron and his lobbying on behalf of a finance company. The government announces an independent investigation. And Princes William and Harry pay personal tributes to their grandfather. I'll miss my grandpa, and master of the barbecue, legend of banter.
Coming up in Sports Day later in the hour on the BBC News Channel, we'll look back at the Masters, how Hideki Matsuyama won golf's first major and how he wants to be a pioneer for Japanese players.
Good evening and welcome to the BBC News at 6. Many of us have been enjoying the opportunity of getting out and doing a bit of shopping, going to pubs and cafes as major parts of the economy have opened up in England and Wales. The government, though, has urged us all to act responsibly with this latest easing of lockdown. In England, restaurants and pubs can now serve people outdoors. All shops, hairdressers, beauty salons, gyms and outdoor attractions like zoos and theme parks can also reopen. Wales has also reopened shops. Remaining pupils have gone back to school and restrictions on travelling across the border have eased. In Scotland, all students, except those who are shielding, have now returned to the classroom, as have pupils in Northern Ireland. The stay-at-home order there is also ending and being replaced with guidance to stay local. Our business editor Simon Jack is in Newquay for us tonight. No, that's not Simon Jack. We'll come to him in a moment. There he is. Simon Jack, look like you're having a great time there in the sunshine and the drinkers as well.
Sunny but chilly, I have to say, Fiona. Just look at it. It's an undeniably beautiful sight, and from today accompanied by the very welcome sound of tills beginning to tick over in the very hard-hit tourism and hospitality sectors so important to regions like this. Now, there are some big challenges ahead. We're nowhere near back to all systems go, but this is seen as an important step, an important test in what customers, businesses and the government hopes is an irreversible road now to full recovery.
Opening up after 5 long months of lockdown. Newquay Zoo welcome back customers on a day the government and business hopes will revive the animal spirits of an economy that's been slumbering.
So what does it feel like?
Like we just got out of prison.
It's amazing. To be out.
You've got more freedom to see people now and you don't just feel so sort of cooped up really, so it's definitely a big sort of weight off your shoulders.
The zoo was on the edge of bankruptcy last year and had to close its sister site in Devon, so today's visitors were very welcome.
It's hugely important for us. All the way through, we've had people in, we've had the animals to look after, and we've had no income to do that. So having our guests back in today and having them here enjoying the zoo, as well as bringing an income in so that we can move forward again as a business, is fantastic.
Great news too for a very hard-hit hospitality sector. A cool outdoor terrace got a very warm welcome from customers.
Cheers! The first draft beer for 6 months.
Yeah.
It's just going to be lovely to get some proper fresh air and a bit of freedom.
Owner Sally Pickles says it's an important first step on the road to recovery.
The customers want us to be open, the staff are ready to come back. I think it's just something that we have to start and just see what happens. We just hope that this is us open and then in May we'll be fully open and there'll be no looking back.
Today's clearly a massive moment for the national mood and for the economy. But remember, 60% of hospitality venues have no outside space, and the ones that do may be running at a loss. So what's next
is key. Now, the government says it doesn't want COVID certificates or passports in everyday life, but hospitality chiefs worry they'll be offered two different ways of losing money: half-empty venues without certificates, or full ones with them, but the additional cost and staff to check them. Too cold for an outdoor swim? Indoor pools and gyms can now reopen. Different sectors will see different demand. It's been a cautious return at this holiday park. 600 people arriving out of a normal 3,000 at this time of year. But John Hyatt expects numbers to grow.
This year, what we've seen even throughout the last few months is a huge amount of confidence from our guests in the bookings and inquiry stage, where either they've had their vaccine, they've got their vaccine appointment through, and they're almost the first or second phone call they're making to us is to reserve their holiday. There's a lot of confidence out there.
These are small steps back to normality, but an important test for consumers and businesses. The government will hope this will see a wall of money rolling in from those who have it and a new chance to earn it for those who haven't. Simon Jack, BBC News, Newquay.
Some shoppers were so keen today they were queuing outside stores from dawn. Figures show that by 10 this morning, the number of people going shopping was up by more than 200% compared to last week. Our business correspondent Emma Simpson has been talking to some of those keen to get some retail therapy again.
It's been a long time coming. High streets emerging from hibernation. Customers waiting to get inside. Some more patiently than others.
We'll go round this way.
Wherever the city, one store drawing the biggest crowds.
I do online shop, but I prefer to be out and about and getting in there, looking.
Looks like it's gone very well today.
Yeah. Do not show my partner this.
Have you missed it?
Oh, absolutely. Have you?
Yes.
Yeah? Missed it. Just nice to be out and see lots of different people again.
So what size are we wearing at the minute?
Shoe fittings are back on, even outside.
Your feet are feeling a bit tight in those shoes now, aren't they?
Yeah.
Changing rooms are allowed again, and fashion retailers have a whole new season for sale.
I'm so relieved that we've got here. We've been closed for around 8 months out of the last 13, and how can you really run a business like that? Luckily we've got an online presence, so that's been really helpful. I mean, I don't know what would have happened if we'd had not been online.
There's an awful lot of pent-up demand, and households have squirreled away more than £100 billion in savings over the last year. The hope is this will fuel a summer spending spree, but with a massive shift in online shopping, will stores still see the same number of people coming through their doors as they did before the pandemic? Some purchases, though, just aren't the same online.
Yeah, it's my 21st birthday today, so looking for a bit of jewellery to mark that date and just remember it forever, really.
Today's a big moment for retail too. The boss of this chain told me she's optimistic, but shops will have to work harder to keep customers coming.
There is a definite bounce back. We are going to see customers coming out and spending with us. And the longer term challenge is going to be to keep that footfall coming. And I think the redevelopment of high streets is going to be critical going forward.
Some household names didn't make it, and this chain's in its final days. By lunchtime, this city centre was heaving. Not everyone liked it. Do you think it's too busy then?
Yes. Yeah, I do. It's not for us. No.
But here's something we've all missed.
I'm getting quite desperate, so if I'm more brunette than blonde at this point.
Hiya. Got any spaces?
Unfortunately not. We're booked up until the middle of May now. It's been demoralising, and I just want it back to normal now. We want to get back to normal, back on our feet and just crack on and get everybody's hair done, get everybody out.
It's not business as usual today, but it is one big step closer to normality. Emma Simpson, BBC News, Nottingham.
In Wales, there were also queues on the high street as all shops can reopen, but not gyms nor outdoor hospitality. Our Wales correspondent Howell Griffith is in Cardiff for us. Howell, we had a brief glimpse of you earlier on. So more freedoms, but some key restrictions remaining.
Yeah, it's worth remembering that Wales was the first of the UK nations to shut up the shops days before Christmas. So after a 16-week wait, the city centre was today pretty busy with the shoppers looking for some bargains, but not at the bars and restaurants near us here at the castle. It'll be another 2 weeks before outdoor hospitality resumes here. Again, it's worth noting that different parts of the UK are doing this at a different pace. Some of us had a haircut 4 weeks ago, but still aren't able to have a drink. Anyone who is desperate for a pint can, of course, travel across the border into an English pub, with travel restrictions being lifted today. Probably more significantly is that people can also now visit Wales, which will be a help to the tourism industry that depends on that inward travel. The Welsh Government, for a large part of this unlocking process, has been criticised for not having a roadmap. It has now published a whole set of dates for the next 4 weeks. Gyms will open in May. People can meet indoors with another household at the start of May. But probably the most significant date ahead is May the 6th. That's the date of the Senedd elections, and that's when the people of Wales will get to vote on how they think this pandemic has been handled.
Al in Cardiff, thank you. Well, let's take a look at the latest government figures. There were 3,568 new coronavirus infections recorded in the latest 24-hour period. On average, 2,744 new cases were reported per day in the last week. There are currently 2,862 patients in hospital with COVID-19. 13 deaths were reported in the latest 24-hour period. That's people who died within 28 days of a positive COVID-19 test. On average in the past week, 34 deaths were announced every day. A total of 127,100 people have now died from coronavirus in the UK. As for vaccinations, more than 69,000 people have had their first dose of a COVID vaccine in the latest 24-hour period, bringing the total to almost 32.2 million. More than 189,000 people had their second jab, meaning over 7.6 million people have now had both doses of the vaccine. Let's talk to our health editor, Hugh Pym. And Hugh, I saw it on the way into work here. You just have to look on the high street to see there are a lot of people out there, but the government is urging us to be very cautious still.
Yes, Fiona, I think it'll be a few weeks before government scientists and advisors reach any conclusions about the impact of today's easing of restrictions in different parts of the UK, whether the virus has spread further or not. It takes time for virus cases to develop. That's why we've got these 5-week gaps between each stage of the roadmap to allow for that assessment and then advice to governments about going to the next stage or not. But officials I speak to are reasonably confident so far, looking back to the reopening of schools from late February and early March around the UK. There had been an expectation that cases might increase in different communities with more people going in and out of schools and pupils and more parents maybe going back to work. But that hasn't happened. The latest survey by the Office for National Statistics at the end of last week, covering the previous week, when school terms were continuing before Easter, showed that actually in England and Northern Ireland there was a levelling off of cases, but case rates had continued falling in Wales and Scotland. And of course we're now into the school holidays, so you'd expect cases to fall further from there. But as you suggested, there is this feeling of people being out and about, and I think there's a bit of worry in government, that different governments, that people may feel a little complacent, feel that going back to the shops and to outdoor hospitality means things are back to normal. They're not back to normal. The roadmaps are progressing, and there is caution, certainly, before any firm conclusions are reached.
OK, Hugh, thank you. Princes William and Harry have paid separate tributes to their grandfather, the Duke of Edinburgh. William described Prince Philip as an extraordinary man, part of an extraordinary generation. Harry wrote, "He was my grandpa, master of the barbecue, legend of banter." Here's our royal correspondent, Nicholas Witchell.
He was there for them at their moment of greatest anguish, walking with the young William and Harry behind the coffin of their mother after her death in a road accident. And the bond between the grandfather and the grandsons on whom so many hopes rested was a deep one. In his statement, William says he feels fortunate to have had his grandfather's enduring presence to guide him through good times and the hardest days. He recalled the special memories his own children will have of their great-grandpa coming to collect them in his carriage. And then William says this: Catherine and I will continue to do what he would have wanted and will support the Queen in the years ahead. I will miss my grandpa, but I know he would want us to get on with the job. Harry speaks of his grandfather's unparalleled devotion to the Queen. He'd been a man of honour and great humour, master of the barbecue, legend of banter, and cheeky right to the end. Harry finished by saying this: "Grandpa, thank you for your service, your dedication to Granny, and for always being yourself. You will be sorely missed, but always remembered by the nation and the world." In the Houses of Parliament, recalled early from the Easter recess, politicians paid their tributes, led by the Prime Minister.
He gave us, and he gives us all, a model of selflessness and of putting others before ourselves. And though I suspect, Mr. Speaker, that he might be embarrassed or even faintly exasperated to receive these tributes, he made this country a better place.
A life lived in strong and vigorous brushstrokes, like his painting. And we offer up this tribute to the Duke of Edinburgh for a lifetime of public service, the Gold Award.
In the Scottish Parliament in Edinburgh, tributes to the Duke were led by the First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon.
And of course he faced the additional challenge of being the husband of a powerful woman at a time when that was even more of an exception than it is today. That reversal of the more traditional dynamic was highly unusual in the 1940s, 50s and 60s, and even now isn't as common as it might be.
A virtual session of the Welsh Assembly heard from the First Minister, Mark Drakeford.
To have lived such a life at the centre of world events, and in a way which made almost every experience of public rather than simply private interest, makes it even more remarkable still. And that was the life of the Duke of Edinburgh.
He'd stepped onto the national stage before most of today's political leaders were born. Today, they spoke out in their appreciation of him. Nicholas Witchell, BBC News.
Time has just gone 6:15. Our top story this evening. People in England have been returning to the pub and the high street as lockdown rules are relaxed. Coming up, Baroness Shirley Williams, who quit Labour to become a founding member of the SDP in the 1980s, has died, aged 90.
Coming up on Sports Day in the next 15 minutes on the BBC News channel, we catch up with Rachel Blackmore. After she made history at Aintree, the Grand National winner has some grand ambitions for her horse racing career.
After mounting criticism of lobbying by the former Prime Minister David Cameron on behalf of the failed financial services company Greensill, the government has announced an independent investigation. Gordon Brown today said former Prime Ministers should never lobby for commercial purposes. Mr Cameron insists he broke no rules, but admits he should have used more formal channels. He had contacted senior politicians by text messages to their private numbers. Here's our political editor, Laura Kuensberg.
Decisions made behind Whitehall's closed doors affect millions of us and billions of pounds. So there's big business in using contacts and conversations to persuade those with power to act. Lobbying is allowed, but look who once warned it could go badly wrong.
I'm talking about lobbying, and we all know how it works. The lunches.
As an eager opposition leader, he was worried.
The ex-ministers and ex-advisors for hire, helping big businesses find the right way to get its way.
The concerns about him, though, now. There was no sign of the former Prime Minister at his Oxfordshire home today, but plenty of attention on his behaviour, texting the Chancellor, emailing officials, arranging a drink with the Health Secretary. No sign of him in London either, after his work promoting a bank that's now collapsed has been revealed.
Greensill Capital was in this anonymous London office block, and the boss here advised the government during David Cameron's time in charge. But the roles reversed, and at the start of the pandemic, the former Prime Minister appealed to former colleagues to try to get Greensill involved in emergency government-backed loans. One of those he tried to lobby told me it was classic casual Cameron. The former Prime Minister is adamant he didn't break any rules,
but a senior lawyer's been appointed to investigate exactly what happened. And it's prompted a wider conversation about whether those rules really work at all. So what is allowed? Well, when ministers leave office, they are prohibited from lobbying government for 2 years. To take any job during that time, they have to tell an independent committee who checks whether it's appropriate, to avoid the suspicion of reward for past favours or the risk of them improperly exploiting privileged access. But it's nearly 5 years since David Cameron left office. Are the rules tight enough?
Public office should not become the platform for private gain. And I don't really think former ministers and former prime ministers should be engaged in lobbying for particular commercial companies when they're lobbying their successors.
Labour claims the investigation might be a cover-up and is pushing for answers about how current ministers responded. But some Tories also believe clearer rules are needed.
Lobbying is part and parcel of any democratic system. Constituents, businesses, everybody's lobbying the government for things they want or things they think the government should do. The question is, when there are conflicts of interest, how do officials and ministers in government respond? And there isn't nearly enough conversation about this. It's got much too casual.
In theory, there's nothing wrong with trying to change the government's mind. But how that's done in practice matters to how those acting on all our behalf decide. Laura Kunzberg, BBC News, Westminster.
There's been a night of protest in the US city of Minneapolis after a young black man was shot by police. Daunt White had been stopped for a traffic violation and drove off. After being shot, he died minutes later. The shooting took place just miles from the ongoing trial of police officer Derek Chauvin for the death of George Floyd. The mother of Jack Merritt, who was killed in a terror attack near London Bridge in 2019, has told the Inquest her son's death was a tragedy, but his life was a triumph. Saskia Jones and Jack Merritt were stabbed to death at Fishmongers Hall by a former prisoner during a rehabilitation conference. Our Home Affairs correspondent Tom Simons reports.
The event at Fishmongers Hall was about helping offenders move on from their criminal pasts. Usman Khan, released from prison after a terrorism offence, was invited, but he arrived with a fake bomb vest concealed under a large coat. The jury heard he had a long discussion with Saskia Jones, a volunteer, before heading downstairs to the ground floor to the toilets, where he strapped knives to his wrists. Jack Merritt came in and Khan stabbed him repeatedly. Outside in a cloakroom, Saskia Jones was stabbed in the neck. In reception, Khan attacked 2 more people attending the event, but the Inquest heard they started to fight back. He was chased onto London Bridge by 3 men, John Crilly, Steve Gallant and Darren Frost, using a fire extinguisher and a giant whale tusk taken from the hall. They dragged him to the ground. Seconds later, he was shot twice by police.
The jury was shown footage from several police cameras. Officers are discussing whether Khan has a real suicide vest. They have to clear people from a walkway under the bridge. They declare a possible major terrorist incident. And eventually, Khan is shot dead.
But today began with a portrait of Jack Merritt, read by his mother Anne, described by his friends and family. Absorbingly intelligent, fiercely loyal, with a strong moral compass. The family of Saskia Jones said she would have wanted this process to be thorough, and it will last 9 weeks. Tom Simons, BBC News, at London Guildhall.
The veteran Liberal Democrat politician Baroness Williams has died at the age of 90. As Shirley Williams, she served in 2 Labour cabinets in the 1970s and was instrumental in the introduction of comprehensive schools. In the 1980s, she was one of the so-called Gang of 4 who founded the Social Democratic Party. Our deputy political editor, Vicky Young, looks back at her life.
We've been through all the sugar refiners.
Shirley Williams was once tipped as a future Prime Minister, but joked that her disorganised nature ruled her out. She was clear, though, the qualities needed for the job.
The capacity to get on with all kinds of people, without side, without snobbery, without aloofness.
Politics was in her blood. Her mother was Vera Brittain, a famous novelist and feminist campaigner. Shirley Williams joined the Labour Party in her teens and entered the House of Commons in 1964. In a male-dominated profession, she was often the only woman on the platform. She rose to cabinet level when Labour returned to power in 1974 and later as Education Secretary began to replace grammar schools with the comprehensive system. But she and others became disillusioned as the Labour Party moved to the left. She urged colleagues to keep to the centre ground of British politics.
Too many have done something which is known as keeping your head down. Well, the time has come when you'd better stick your heads up.
But in 1981, Williams dramatically walked away from Labour, one of the so-called Gang of Four who established the SDP, promising to break the mould of British politics. She won Crosby in a famous by-election.
We are making a new beginning for Britain and a new vision for Britain.
But the euphoria was short-lived.
There's somebody who's working on and trying to show ways in which...
She lost in the 1983 general election, and the SDP won just 6 seats. A sometimes acrimonious merger with the Liberal Party eventually created the Liberal Democrats. Now Baroness Williams, she held senior academic posts but remained active in politics, becoming president of the party.
My Lords.
She was passionately pro-European, using her final speech to the House of Lords before retirement to make the case against Brexit.
Think very hard before allowing the United Kingdom withdraw from what I believe to be its major duty to the world, and that is the one it will encounter and then deliver through the European Union.
Yeah. Today, colleagues recalled her wisdom and warmth.
The view was that if Shirley Williams and I had been running the 83 election together, we'd have done even better than we did. She was just a very, very popular person, much more popular than any of the rest of us.
Shirley was a Liberal lion. She was a trailblazer, particularly for women in politics. The Liberal Democrat family is very sad tonight.
Baroness Shirley Williams, who's died at the age of 90. Now, as we've been hearing, to the relief of many people in England, hairdressers are finally allowed to reopen, and they will no doubt be facing a few challenges trying to sort out all those home haircuts during lockdown. Our North of England correspondent Danny Savage has been talking to a hairdresser and customers in York.
Outside this barber's in York, they were queuing today.
Are you ready?
Inside, lots of wild hair was on show.
I don't think you'll get much change out of what, 70 to 80 pounds, I think.
The joke here was that they should be charging by the ounce.
It's my hair that's been getting me down during this lockdown. It really has. I mean, as I would say, I couldn't do a thing with it.
Right, that is a comparison.
Ross was showing his barber exactly what he wanted. A far cry from what he actually came in with. Next door was the ladies' salon, where Melanie had opted for the first appointment on the first day.
I've been dying to come to the hairdressers. I haven't been going out. Only once a week I've worn a hat.
So you've worn a hat to cover up your head?
Yeah.
Because you didn't like the look of it?
No, because it looked horrible.
Is that okay for you, sir?
In the barber's, Martin was finished. A fine head of hair for a 72-year-old. At a nearby salon, Justine was having her hair done.
It's a lovely colour.
For the first time in a year.
A few hats did come out and a few hoods going up and asking my children if I looked that bad or if I looked like Winnie the Witch, but they used to say no. But I didn't believe them. Just absolutely brilliant to be here.
Back in the queue, there was disappointment for James. If your name's not down, you weren't getting in.
Can I make an appointment?
Monday, the 12th of April 2021 will forever be remembered as a big hair day. Danny Savage, BBC News, York.
All right, let's take a look at the weather with Matt Taylor. Hi, Matt. Now, I'm getting my hair cut on Thursday, in case you're interested. But I see that you've been looking very dapper throughout lockdown. Has Mrs Taylor been doing some home hair cutting?
Mrs Taylor's been doing some very good home hair cutting, to be honest, Fiona. And she's gutted that I'm going to the hairdressers later this week. But I think many will want to keep the locks long at the moment because quite a chill out there. Even it's Nice, yeah, when the sun's out like it was here in Stirling. Bit of warmth to that mid-April sunshine, but out of it, there's no mistake. And we've got Arctic air with us at the moment. And last night was our coldest April night since 2013. And tonight, we're not going to be a million miles off that either. Down to around -8 in the Grampians and across rural parts of England and Wales. Could get as low as around -3 to -5 Celsius. And not quite as chilly across some of these western areas. And that's because here, through the night into the morning, a little bit more cloud, 1 or 2 showers. And those showers will become a bit more abundant in the west through the day. Rain, maybe a little bit of sleet and snow in the hills and some soft hail too. Many still staying dry for much of the day. And across eastern areas, predominantly dry day tomorrow. All of us seeing temperatures climb just a little bit compared to today. But 8 to 13 Celsius, it's still down on where we should be. Here's just a quick comparison to show where we should be. Should be around 11 to 14 degrees across the country, around 2 or 3 Celsius below that at the moment. And we will be for a good part of this week. Certainly into Wednesday, another cold day, frosty start. Greater chance of some mist and fog. But most places actually stay dry on Wednesday, even with a bit of cloud and 1 or 2 showers popping up. Big difference into Wednesday, though, will be down the eastern coast. The chill returns. We tend to get the winds coming off the sea as our high pressure shifts. Winds going around that in a clockwise fashion. Northeasterly winds brings the air off sea temperatures of around 7 or 8 degrees at the moment in the east coast. So not much above that through the day. 1 or 2 showers East Anglia and the southeast. But most parts of the UK on Thursday will be dry again. Sunny spells, best of which in the morning. Bit more cloud into the afternoon. And beyond that, most places will stay dry. Temperatures lift a little bit as we go through into the weekend. But we could see some rain in Scotland and Northern Ireland. Fiona, back to you.
Matt, thanks very much. A reminder of our top story this evening. People in England have been returning to the pub and the high street as lockdown rules are relaxed. That's all from the BBC News at 6. It's goodbye from me, and on BBC One, we can join the BBC's news teams where you are. Bye-bye.